Throughout history, Black communities have gathered in living rooms, churches, and salons to dream boldly about education, justice, and freedom. Today, the Black Teacher Collaborative carries that tradition forward, creating spaces for visionaries, educators, and parents to build liberatory learning experiences for Black children.
What BTC was founded on is the idea that an education is not just about transferring knowledge from an adult or from an educator to a child, but especially within the context of Black education. Education is about bringing out the genius. We describe it as the genius, the wonder, the power, and the beauty of Black children.
Village of Wisdom reminds us when Black children are affirmed, when their interests and identities are centered, they rise. Every child deserves to be seen not just as a student, but as a genius in motion.
Folks need to be affirmed, and there's a lot of research that shows that the more children are affirmed, the more resilient they are to racial discrimination experiences, which is important when a lot of times kids are experiencing a lot of racial discrimination experiences a day. Some recent studies, especially with like social media, we're talking about hundreds of times a day where children are experiencing that. And so that was one of the biggest challenges that we had with our parents over the years, and they experience is just like trying to do enough affirmation to counteract that. So if you imagine a child is experiencing 100 instances of their racial identity being kind of devalued, then you need 100 just to get back to even. And maybe 150 to kind of get to like where they're actually feeling good about it, right? And so like that's a challenge, right? And that's not saying like you gotta, keep saying you're a Black genius 100 times a day, but sometimes parents get that by creating a household environment where children are being reminded of their Blackness and how beautiful it is over and over again by a conversation that they're having with somebody else.
True education prepares our children to navigate all cultures without abandoning who they are. We must move beyond code switching toward authentic, expansive Black genius.
But early on in Village of Wisdom, like we asked parents, like, well, what is it that you would like to see out of your schools, or what do you want more of? And, they pretty much had the same kind of refrain. My child ain't interested in what's happening inside of their school. My kid don't trust these teachers, and they ain't doing enough Black history in here. And so I see some shaking heads, and it sounds like y'all have heard this before. And, as I heard those things, I was like, man, this sounds like the stuff I'm reading in these grad school classes. Like there's this theory called self-determination theory by DC and Ryan. And they say if you want to be intrinsically motivated in a task that's going to be rigorous for a learner, that's going to be hard and takes a lot of effort, you got to have some intrinsic motivation. Like they got a whole theory about this. Like people have cited them thousands and thousands of times. But when a Black mama comes to a school and tells the teacher that they're not interested in the classroom, then all of a sudden it's not important. But over here in this space, these two white guys say it's important enough for y'all to reference it 1,000 times. It can't be both of these things, right? Like, and so that's, one of the first kind of Black genius element we talk about is interest awareness.
Liberatory education is a collective project. At Village of Wisdom, parents are trained as co-educators, ensuring classrooms affirm Black identity, healing, and excellence at every level.
And I think the beauty of what William has done with his framework, I think it's the beauty of our framework, it is about taking our traditions and taking our approach and then applying new information, new ideas, new learning, and new technology to it. And so I so greatly appreciate it because I think I had amazing teachers, but they spent a lot of time correcting those things. And that's not to say, and William isn't saying, I'm sure isn't saying, there's no space for, again, giving our children the full tools that they need, including there are places where you say ain't, and there are places where perhaps you don't say ain't. But at the same time, codifying and sharing those practices and innovating on those practices, I think are really, really critical. And so I just wanted to point that out and just say how much I appreciate that both in your work, and I know, as I've been to some of you all's schools, it's what's happening in you all's schools as well. And ideally, that the innovation of that practice being defined to shape how all teachers are being trained and developed, and how we are shaping educational experiences for our kids, even beyond any of our direct work.
Across the country, bold new models are taking shape. At Liberation Academy, students are solutionists, empowered to think critically and reshape society. At Peace Academy, children are geniuses, affirmed every day in their Black brilliance.
School essentially is premised on a liberatory pedagogy, from the Freirian aspect. And from that, for us, what it looks like is posing questions to we call them solutionists. So posing questions to our solutionists that cause them to think about society and think about the world. And so we use state-aligned curriculum, but in using a state-aligned curriculum, I challenge teachers, think about how this text or how this story, how this theme connects to society, and what question can you pose to young folks to get them to think critically about how they connect or exist within this realm.
I'm the founder and executive director of Peace Academy. And a lot of our work is grounded in so many of the concepts that you mentioned, primarily because we are the first charter school in Georgia to focus on being an Afrocentric charter school. And so that has brought us a lot of great people who have great intentions. And the theory, I think, is solid. The challenge that we're having right now is moving from theory to practice. So many of our educators want to create a liberatory environment. They want to believe in our geniuses, and that is what we call our students, our geniuses. They have good intentions, and we are all still breathing in the smog. And so, at the drop of a dime, anybody can go back to doing something that's highly oppressive to students. And so trying to figure out how do we really, and I have your framework up in front of me, try to figure out how do we instill this so that it becomes second nature or first nature, right? Like, we do a lot of training around cultural identity, around Afro studies. We have a cultural studies course that our students take from kindergarten through, we're fourth grade now, we'll go up to eighth grade. So every day our students get a cultural studies course.
And so one of the things that really struck me was Brian's comment about bringing, allowing teachers to be their authentic self, and the work that we do with Black educators to dream and design a school that is non-hierarchical, that is not, grounded in domination practices that we've all had to navigate our entire lives to even gain some level of success.
And so what that means is I think we have to have more conversations. And interestingly, especially in this particular time when standards and goals and requirements are being basically flamed, right? We do have an opportunity to create our own set of standards, more so than we have had before, right? And so I think we really have to kind of start to say, like, for folks who've been trying to create standards, right? Like Paulette and BTC have a whole framework around their Black liberatory, education. COASTBOC, the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color, they had a whole set of standards and stuff like that. And so what does it mean for us to collectively get behind a set of standards and say, like, by the way, and of course we were using BTC standards as we were rolling out this curriculum. But like that's the future that I think of a liberatory education that we need to be kind of looking for and pushing toward.
In the storm of uncertainty, we find new ground. We are the architects of tomorrow. Together, we are building schools, dreams, and futures rooted in the genius of our children and the boldness of our ancestors.